IoT World today. I'm Lauren Horowitz, Senior Content Director, and I'm here with Bill Clayman of Switch. Bill, it's great to have you with us.
It is a pleasure to be here as well. Thank you, Lauren.
Oh, thank you for joining us today. So I waylaid you with some IoT themes that I wanted to talk about as we kind of approach the new year, as we are in the swing of the new year. Things that I wanted to talk to you about. So I gave you a number of trends, and I'm just going to launch right in and start asking you. We've seen some of these trends kind of take new shape and have new impact in 2020, and in some cases even a bit earlier. And some of them, I think we're gonna see them continue to kind of gather momentum or morph in 2021. So I want to talk to you about what that might look like, and I want to start with the first one, which is really thinking about gathering data analytics at the edge. What does that look like in 2021? And what are some of the good things that we might see? What are some of the negatives?
Wow, gathering analytics at the edge. I think if anything 2020 has taught us is that a lot of people are, I want to say living on the edge. That's a very personal thing, but they're experiencing the true concepts of distributed computing, right? We're seeing an entire division of workforce that never thought they'd be working from home. Well, they are effectively doing so. One of the things that we're seeing at the edge, especially, is this connectivity desert. We've heard of things like food deserts. Now there's connectivity deserts, which edge computing is ideally trying to solve. And a part of that is IoT. What we're going to start seeing are new concepts around these connected things at the edge, and sometimes at the furthest reaches of the edge as well. Things like mist computing. Now, please don't yell at me. I don't want to throw in another marketing or another technology word out there, but what you're going to start seeing is things like localized analytics and leveraging decision-making data very close to the source, faster responses to localized data for things like applications and services, data geofencing, and things like access control policies for greater levels of security at the localized level, grouping, filtering, even pattern recognition at that device level, and things like deeper integration with smarter devices. Everything from healthcare to education to manufacturing to unmanned facilities are going to be, let's use the word, lit up by these digital tools. So in 2021 and sort of beyond, these connected elements are going to require infrastructure, connectivity, certainly resiliency, and the ability to support everyone that connects to it. At the highest level, everybody listening, edge computing and IoT specifically are still designed to help you process data, services, analytics, information as close to the source as possible. So you can see how a device and the compute node that's close to it are intertwined and really important together. Now, the challenges here, the overflow of data. When too much data becomes too much of a problem, how do you deal with this? How do you ingest it? Where do you use smart engines to actually correlate and quantify what data is important? That needs to happen immediately because you're going to be swimming in a sea of data. There's even things called data lakes. Some of them are well controlled and well managed. Some of them are not. Another challenge is going to be something called IT asset management. In the past, we've controlled these IoT and just connected devices that were more centralized on a network. Well, that's not the case anymore. They're distributed. They're all over the place, and some of them are going to have sensitive PII, PHI data associated with them. How are you managing this? And not just the physical devices, the associated licenses, SaaS components, cloud pieces of it. Remember, it's not just a physical piece of IoT device. It's all the services and all the applications and all the tools that connect to it as well. That's going to become a bit more of an issue as we try to navigate all these connected devices and all the data they produce.
And you alluded to this, but I don't want to waylay you from all the many other trends we're going to talk about, but I think it's important to also say that identifying what kind of data you're going to gather, what's important, is still a challenge, I think, for a lot of companies.
Absolutely. Well, there's things like productivity data, there's things like device data. Not all data is created equally, right? Things like structured versus unstructured data. If you're looking at an Excel spreadsheet versus like a whole bunch of emails or just, sort of a slush of information. You're taking a look at an airplane, for example, like these engines that are being developed by GE and Rolls-Royce and some of these other ones that are generating, in some cases, terabytes of data per flight. So how do you ingest all of it? How do you take a look at it? How do you parse out what's important? So a part of it is, yes, knowing and understanding that not all data is built the same. that this information is exceedingly valuable once you parse it out, ingest it, and work with it properly. That's when you work with things like data warehouses, data lakes, for example, smarter cognitive systems, things like AI that do vision, pattern, audio recognition, any of those things that work on your behalf. But data classification is going to be a really, really important part of working with IoT componentry. And that's where you start to work with good partners, good development partners, and good solutions that can help you identify and learn as much as you can from that data.
Okay, we could say a lot more about that trend, but I want to talk about the next one because it's equally big. Let's talk about connectivity and kind of burgeoning connectivity options. We've heard a lot about 5G. Let's talk about hype versus reality over the next X amount of time. What do you foresee there?
All right. I have to calm down a little bit because this is a topic that I really enjoy talking about. When I remember when 4G LTE came out, I got so stoked because my phone was like super fast and I could like stream all my favorite cat videos and it was amazing, right? And so 5G comes out and people are like, oh, it's kind of the same thing, just more cat videos and faster. I'm like, well, just back up. They're not quite the same. 5G technologies, and I implore everybody to give it a read, go on your favorite search engine and just start to really look into these technologies specifically, what they're going to do. Yes, if you're close to a 5G tower or if you're in a 5G lit area of a city, you're going to get faster download speeds. What's amazing about 5G technology is that you have a broader spectrum and a broader technology to actually work with. You can actually leverage things like sub-6 frequencies, licensed and unlicensed frequencies, where you can create your own cellular network. Now, let me explain why that's really cool. Let's pretend like you're at an airport, a regional airport, right? And you've traditionally connected to your everyday cellular towers, but all of a sudden something goes down with those towers, and now you've lost connectivity at this airport or just a critical facility, let's say, right? Now with 5G, you can create your own geo-fenced cellular network that does not depend on the coverage or towers of other providers. You literally will continue to stay up even if the other local providers go down, because you have your own 5G network. This can be applied to logistics, remote facilities, data centers, security environments, government facilities, etc. A lot of really cool use cases here. What's really interesting is that these 5G antenna, these connections, they are broadband. They are exceedingly fast. And what we're seeing in rural and remote areas is a hunger for connectivity. Remember what I talked about, these connectivity deserts? They're real. And when you combine things like 5G, the connectivity spectrum that 5G provides, and the speed, coupled with this new idea of edge computing, smaller edge environments that are distributed to secondary, tertiary markets, you light up that 50% that still does not have real access to broadband services all over the world. So these technologies, they're your connectivity bridge to solve these connectivity desert issues and challenges in more rural and remote locations, to bring, my goodness, life-saving services, improved logistics and visibility into data, improved services for people, whether they're healthcare or government. But again, giving that capacity to connect to more people all over the country.
So in some of my discussions with analysts, they also want to make that distinction between what they believe we'll see, which is more sort of private 5G enlisted by enterprises in, say, manufacturing or in healthcare settings, versus widely deployed public 5G.
So you will see two different types of 5G technologies. And this is where, again, I implore everyone to take a look and read up more about this. You will have the traditional cellular technology, right? Your 5G ready devices, whether it's a mobile device, a machine with a cell card, or whatever the case might be. That's the consumer side of it. But you will also have the side of it where it becomes commercialized for private industry or public industry use, where you are creating your own networks, where you are deploying things like edge computing directly in conjunction with a 5G antenna for the purpose of connectivity for, a tier 2, 3 market, or a city, for example. It doesn't have to be just not a primary market. So yes, you are going to see more business opportunities, or just more opportunities in general to deploy connectivity options. And yes, they're going to be on the consumer side, where you can connect your favorite, phone device to a faster network, or you're going to see that on a corporate side with privately developed 5G technologies. My opinion, I think it's great. You're going to get a chance to broaden out your connectivity spectrum. You're going to get better speeds. You're going to be able to deliver more rich content and applications to more users. So a lot of positives there.
Okay, so now let's talk about one that I think has taken on new dimensions in 2020, which is kind of smart environments. I think, corporate buildings prior to the advent of COVID-19 were looking at connected buildings for things like, keyless entry, facial recognition, helping with parking, or even helping with temperature throughout a building, all these sort of conveniences of building management. But now we have kind of new components of it that really include health and safety.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. There's this really nifty video, Lauren, and everybody listening, that I saw. It's a door that opens. I think it was a Kickstarter event or something like that. You open it and you let go, and like a little throttle goes back and forth with some kind of hand sanitizer, and it cleans the door for you, right? So it basically cleans the door every single time you open it and close it. Working with safety measures and understanding, who is entering your building and who's not, it's an extra layer of security, certainly. I am not surprised to be seeing more robotics, levels of automation, more screening technologies, and just things that keep people safer. Because obviously no one wants to experience, an event where multiple people become ill, or even a security event, right? So you are going to see systems being deployed that, how should I say, specifically focus on the health and safety of individuals that are interacting with that environment, whether it's a robot that's running around your facility, taking somebody's temperature, or maybe like a self-sanitizing door, for example, which is connected somehow to an IoT technology. But that's definitely something we're going to see, these smarter environments, cities, remote locations that are going to be much more cognizant of where people are. Same thing, understanding foot traffic in a location. Are there more people in one spot? Do we need to be focusing on health and safety measures in this one specific area versus another one? Just understanding the biometrics and the movement of the people within a building or a facility. All of that helps with obviously ensuring safety and deploying the right protocols.
But at the same time, and we don't have to dwell here, but some of those track and trace capabilities present some challenges, right, in terms of monitoring workers more closely. How do you balance privacy and worker autonomy with these new ways of doing business?
What a fine line to walk. And I don't think we're going to get to an answer here, but I do know of organizations that will sometimes mandate that employee or employees to download an application on their phone to do something like contact tracing, right? Let's say you're in a building, and let's say that you do run into somebody who has some kind of an illness. And you have this app installed, and realistically speaking, that type of application is for your safety and for the other person's safety, and really the safety of the population, the people that you're working with. Are there privacy concerns? You betcha, right? As always, we work with just really critical, identifiable data that is ours, right? It's our personal identifiable information. And sometimes, organizations don't always provide a mobile device or a corporate device, and they might ask you to install a profile on your device and, monitor you in such a way. Some of it is trust. Some of it is making sure that you do read some of the agreements. And if you disagree with what a company is trying to do, you're going to have a conversation with them, because ultimately you're not just impacting yourself, but if these are safety applications, safety precautions, you are also impacting some of your coworkers and people around you. Like I said, Lauren, not going to have an answer for you today. It's a fine line to walk.
Okay, let's go to our next one. So let's talk about, we started to allude to this even with the 5G conversation, in terms of new telehealth options and just the digitization of health. There's so many dimensions of it. The blurring of, consumer devices like an Apple Watch and more traditional medicine, the enabling of sort of remote care, either in rural environments or just telehealth, digital records. There's so many aspects of it, but I'll just throw it to you now, and let's see what can we expect more of as we go forward.
The digitization of health, right? And what I'm seeing are advancements in human-centric solutions. So we already touched on a couple of these really important topics. And a big part of the digitization of the healthcare environment industry is a big part of the modernization effort that they're experiencing as well. It's got to happen. Listen, I'm a millennial. I know, I got a beard here, but I am a millennial. And then Gen Z's also out there. They are consuming healthcare services far differently than any other generation, right? They want to be digital. They want to be able to chat with their doctors. They wanted to be able to do a video call. But beyond that, what about things like oncology, or where you require detailed elements of being able to examine a patient, but they're really, really far away? So this is where things like edge computing and 5G really play a big role. In rural locations and remote areas, it's these types of technologies that are going to be true drivers of digital health innovation. I'm going to give you a perfect example. I attended an event here in Chicago recently, and I saw a use case where Kansas City Children's Hospital, in central Kansas, and there was a location that was literally at the edges of the state, far, far away. And what they were able to do is they designed an edge and a content delivery system, as well as a connectivity system that allowed doctors at this remote facility to, doctors from the Kansas City Children's Central Hospital at the center of the city in Kansas City, allowed doctors there to see and interact with kids who, were going through treatment. And this was like 1080p video streamed live, where they can see, a child's bones, for example, maybe their organs, whatever they were working with. It was live. It was high quality content and connectivity. But again, these types of services wouldn't have existed just a few years ago. This child or this person would have had to have driven sometimes 20, 30, 50, 100 miles to get to a facility where they could have been examined in such a fashion. This is what digitization and the modernization of healthcare looks like. The application of connected devices, connectivity, and edge infrastructure to literally empower and improve people's lives. I think that part is extraordinary. Healthcare is going to be, boom, right in the middle of like a bullseye, where we're going to see some of this innovation really, really happen. I'm inspired by it. I think it's great.
And certainly it's kind of creating a whole host of new services that are digital, whether it's scheduling, whether it's wellness services, whether it's just being better able to kind of understand the patient's full profile through a variety of metrics and their records and their activities and behavior, and digitally.
Human-centric architecture, right? To the point of where we're starting to leverage things like cognitive systems and vision detection, for example, to sometimes scan x-rays or scan data points of a patient and find patterns that a doctor may not have been able to see, and present it to the doctor so he can make a better analysis. I absolutely agree with you. I think the digitization of healthcare is going to be amazing. My big caution to anybody listening, whether university or private healthcare or public or whatever, my goodness, be sure you monitor the flow of that data. Don't ever lose control of how and where that data flows and how you interact with it. Because I can tell you right now that you are a target. There's no easy way of saying this, and I'm sure we're probably going to talk about this in a minute. But security is absolutely of paramount consideration when you're developing these distributed ecosystems. So be sure that there's the constant fact that there's going to be more data, and it's going to be very valuable. So work with that in developing better security strategies.
Okay, so now let's talk a little bit about robotics. We talked a little bit about this previously in the context of connectivity and remote monitoring. We certainly have seen robotics become more of a factor in various environments. Talk a little bit about that.
So in 2013, I wrote an article for Data Center Knowledge called "The Robot-Driven Data Center of Tomorrow." And I just got a note recently from a gentleman saying, "Bill, we're 8 years on. What happened to your prediction?" I'm going to go ahead and say that I wasn't completely off. We are seeing some of the element happen at the hyperscale level, right? We're seeing more adoption of robotics and robotic systems out there as well. But realistically speaking, these technologies that are out there, they're going to be making a difference, right? So, I work in an organization, Switch, where we're doing some cool robotics things. And, I recently covered a really fun story from Oracle that that they leveraged Boston Dynamics, the robot, little Spot robot, that literally, and this was in Chicago. And if anybody wants to see this face talking about it, just Google my name and Oracle and Spot, where this little robot would run around the construction facility. It would ensure social distancing. It would check people's temperatures. It would potentially, help with, information if a person asks for it, because you could directly interact with this little guy, or I guess little robot, whatever it is. And you can get information from it. Aside from a Boston Dynamics Spot running around your data center or your facility, I do believe that robotics are going to become a bigger factor. Things like edge computing, distributed environments, and more of what we're seeing in the industry are going to require human augmentation. I don't like thinking that people are going to be replaced, because that's not the case. We're using these technologies to make our lives easier and just basically more effective so that we can be more productive. So these robots are going to become, whether they're security, whether they are, guiding somebody, whether they come out and just introduce themselves and say, hey, let's walk you over to this facility, or if they're driving around a parking lot doing, AI-driven functions that scan license plates to make sure that you're supposed to be there, for example. These are real applications for a world that's going to see more infrastructure, B, more reliance on that infrastructure, and C, it becomes more of a target for people, both logically and physically a target. So these robotics, they're going to become a part of that environment where they're going to be, working with fewer people that are supporting larger ecosystems, edge environments, for example. It's something that I do feel we're going to see. Now, people like Google and these large public cloud providers, they're already using robotic arms to move drives around and tape drives and pull some stuff out. There's really cool videos of that. But I do think in the future, things like robotics and automation are going to be playing a bigger role in our distributed environments and things like edge computing as well.
You alluded to the human jobs question.
Mm-hmm.
We won't dwell here, but I think it's important to note that some jobs will, in fact, go away.
Yeah, I would be foolish to say that's not the case, right? We've seen the evolution of technology, right? There's the argument that the car arguably saved the horse, right? Because, we can now just enjoy that, but there's really not a lot of carriage drivers anymore. So to that extent, I do feel that some roles and some jobs are going to be impacted. I also feel strongly that there's going to be a situation where we're going to be in an environment where we simply have to work with more physical infrastructure, and there's not going to be enough people there. Let's take a look at law enforcement as it is, right? Right now, there's a lot of agencies, a lot of private security, a lot of law enforcement, and in itself, they are stretched pretty thin. Which creates a bit of a challenge, right? How do you enforce security? How do you patrol and make sure that these critical environments are still safe without overburdening existing security forces? That is definitely human augmentation. Other roles, we're seeing an evolution in people's skill sets, whether it's through DevOps, application development. The data center is not going anywhere. If the market's not indicative of that, we're still working with students, college people that are learning how to design the future of digital infrastructure, and it's important to support them with that. We're not outright replacing people with robots. That's not going to happen, and it's something I've talked about quite a bit. And I do feel strongly that we're going to be doing more augmenting people's capabilities and skill sets rather than entirely replacing them, because it's going to be a while before a robot can do the same things that a data center technician or a network technician, somebody that requires that hands-on capability. What I think is going to happen is a robot, let's say you're in a co-location facility or in a facility that manages multiple customers, a robot will stand there and a technician might guide somebody else into fixing a problem, for example, or show them what's going on. And that could be a difference case. Based on what I'm seeing, I really don't think it's going to be a complete, job disruption where we're going to be kicking all these technologies out of their workforce. But I think there's going to be an adaptation.
Mm-hmm. And more requirements for kind of data analysis skills on the human side.
Yeah, so we call those human in the loop operators, right? Where they will take a look at this data, they will take a look at the information, and this data is valuable, right? You can actually monetize this information by having a robot that understands foot traffic, where people are going, how often somebody might pass a specific location. You can feed that information back and actually make it actionable, right? Maybe deploy more units, maybe move some stuff around in a facility. But yes, right, that data is going to become a very important part of everything that a robot might do.
So we talked about the first 5. We have many more to discuss. So I'm gonna stop here. We'll let people digest kind of the first 5 that we've discussed, and then we'll resume and talk about some of the others in a few.
I can't wait for that, Lauren. And I mean, if you want to give a sneak peek, right, it's everything from bots and ransomware, nation states, and blockchain and digital twins. So be sure you come back and listen. It's going to be a fun second half.
Chock full. Yeah. So we'll do part 2 very soon. And to all our viewers, you can always check out IoT World Today for more coverage of many of these trends. And thanks once again to Bill Clayman for joining us today. Thank you.
Thank you.